Hi, good morning, everyone. So first, thank you to the organizers. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak before all of you at this BFSI IT Summit. So before I start, when we were on the way to the venue, did any of you stop to think how escalators and elevators actually work? How do elevators and escalators move us from floor to floor? Like, what holds the floor we're standing on up? Like, we're on the third floor, but what holds it up? What keeps them safe and structurally sound? I know that there are a lot of engineers in this room, but maybe not civil and mechanical engineers. I admit that normally these things don't occur to me. I think we all inherently don't think about them because we've gotten so used to just using them and thinking that it's safe to use escalators, it's safe to use elevators, and even though we're on the third floor or even in higher floors, we think that it's safe, that buildings are inherently safe. So in today's digital economy, especially in the BFSI sector, the processing and sharing of personal data has become more pervasive, and I think we can expect that it will become more pervasive moving forward. From the moment we wake up, and even while we are actually sleeping, our personal information, our preferences, our online behavior, all of these things are being processed at a rate that is only going to keep increasing. Digitalization, digital transformation, big data, and emerging technologies such as AI, and I'm looking at all of the different vendors outside. You would know all of these things better than I would. But I think inevitably all of these things will entail the processing of personal information. That much I think we can agree on. As such, when discussing technology and ethics in the development, deployment, and use of all of these technologies, the Data Privacy Act, which regulates the processing of personal information, and data privacy should not be an afterthought, but logically a top priority. This means going beyond ideas like the responsible use of AI and unbiased algorithms and algorithmic transparency. We should develop a clearer understanding of our accountability and shared responsibility in protecting an individual's fundamental human right to privacy. When it comes to navigating privacy in this digital age, my hope is that we get to a point when we, as data subjects, don't even need to think about privacy. We can trust that our personal data will be processed by companies and government, not just lawfully, but more importantly, fairly and ethically taking into consideration our rights as data subjects. The National Privacy Commission looks at privacy not just as a business enabler, but as an enabler of trust. Trust, and consequently privacy, is a necessary ingredient in the adoption of anything new. This is all the more true when it comes to new technology. Looking at privacy as trust requires those who process personal data to act in the interests of their data subjects. Process their information, again, not just lawfully, but fairly and ethically, respect their obligations under the law, and adhere to the general privacy principles provided under the law. It is my hope that we start looking at privacy not just as another compliance item in a checklist, but about building relationships of trust with your customers. Privacy should be seen as an essential part of offering a product or service, like food safety in the restaurant industry, patient confidentiality in the medical profession, and trust in the banking, financial services, and insurance sector. Trust is important because without it, people won't use or avail of products and services that use these kinds of technologies. And to build this trust, we should all focus on buttressing the very basic concepts related to data privacy and protection. Part of building this trust is being honest with data subjects about data uses and making sure that data subjects are not being manipulated. For the most part, there are few bright line rules in data privacy. The line between compliant and non-compliant primarily depends on how a company goes about achieving their specific purpose and how they demonstrate accountability. The Data Privacy Act doesn't say that customers cannot process and leverage the personal data of their customers. If someone told you that, I can imagine why you'd be upset. After all, there is tremendous value in that data, and I understand that you would have expended cost and resources in acquiring that data. But how you go about processing that information and leveraging that information is the more important question. The continued digitalization of the BFSI sector and the corresponding increase in the processing of customer personal data may result in companies being able to provide better services and products to their customers. While this may be true, industries should not pretend that their use of customer personal data is for their customers' own benefit. The question is not what you think will be better for them, but what they will choose if their autonomy as decision makers will be respected. Would your customers allow you to continue processing their data in a certain way if you gave them the choice? We have all probably heard by now that the processing of personal data is supposed to be done in a proportionate manner, only processing as much information as necessary to achieve the specific purpose that you've communicated to your data subjects. But what about processing that goes beyond what is proportional? Are these not allowed even if they result in additional benefits to data subjects? We answered this question explicitly in the soon-to-be-issued guidelines on consent that's just being circulated for signature. There we said that in cases where there is additional processing on the collected personal information for an additional purpose, a personal information controller must ensure that the consent for such processing is given by the data subjects separately. This means that the additional purpose, the scope and the extent of the processing, as well as the benefits to the data subjects, not only have to be properly communicated to the data subjects, but the data subject must consent to that additional processing separately. This is the exact approach taken by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas in their open finance framework that espouses consent-driven data portability, following the principle that customers are the owners of personal and transaction data. I thank the BSP for incorporating key data privacy principles in their issuance. The question then becomes, will customers be able to understand all the information that's being provided to them? Businesses are now expected to exert the same level of effort in the design and communication of their processing to the data subjects. While design is crucial in ensuring proper compliance with the law, it is equally useful in communicating the necessary information that data subjects need to understand and making things as easy as possible for them to understand exactly what is happening with their data and why. After all, the manner in which something is communicated, its timing, its modality, how it looks on the website, on the app, is as important as the matter, the content that is being communicated. Despite this, we should all realize that it is unrealistic to expect that all data subjects can truly understand all of these information and properly decide for themselves how to weigh the costs and benefits of these types of processing. In fact, studies show that it takes 76 working days to properly read through all the different privacy notices and policies an average person will consent to in a given year. I think we can safely say that none of us has that kind of time to spare. Given all of these, especially in complex processing such as open finance, blockchain, artificial intelligence, you name it, PICs, personal information controllers, and those that they contract to develop these things or outsource, cannot pass the entire burden to their data subjects with the expectation that the data subject's consent will legitimize all manner of processing. Organizations are required to assess the benefits and risks of processing personal information of their customers and, if necessary, take steps to mitigate those risks. Organizations are also expected to assess whether consent is the proper lawful basis to rely upon. I want to emphasize that consent is not the only lawful basis to process under the Data Privacy Act. Legitimate interest can be used as basis to process personal information even without the consent of the data subject. It is my hope that the soon-to-be-issued circular on legitimate interest will make relying on this basis that much clearer and easier. I mentioned earlier about having a good understanding of the basics. However, let me emphasize that focusing on the basics does not mean that we are not addressing the complex issues related to the adoption of emerging technologies. Instead, I see that emphasizing the basics can help people, both data subjects, personal information controllers, and their processors, navigate their way through the complexities of these technologies. The most basic privacy concepts, such as the conduct of a privacy impact assessment, the principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, transparency, and fairness, are the building blocks that can and should be applied in any initiative, digital or otherwise. And I hope we never ever get bored with these basics. Let us not lose sight of the whole point of who data privacy is for. You, me, us, human beings, and data subjects. I think that looking at privacy from this perspective gives greater value to what each of us is doing and what this whole event is designed to do. And I hope that this is something that can guide us in the professional roles we play in the future days ahead of us. With all of us working together, I hope this industry will lead not just the adoption and development of technological innovations towards greater financial inclusion, but also a future where we data subjects do not need to think about our privacy. That we can take it for granted in the same way we take for granted the structural safety of escalators, elevators, and the buildings that we are all in. Because the work needed to ensure that the products and safety of the things we use have already been done. I wish you all a great day of discussions and sharing of ideas and networking. And I hope that we all work towards revolutionizing the financial landscape in the country, taking into consideration, again, all of our privacy rights. Thank you and good morning to everyone.